those prices are too high.
Yeah,
I could feel even our energy being lowered from those.
Yeah. You're like, you should be dancing. It's like, there's nothing to dance about in this one. This is a sad one.
Yeah,
it's a sad day. Look, we're just having a sad day. Like, these prices are terrible.
Yeah.
Tears rolling down. Doing the 2 steps.
Yeah.
Hey, yo, yokoso, which means welcome if you're new and welcome back if you're not. We have finally gotten news about the Legion Go 2 at the announcement that was made at IFA 2025. This is telling us that the prices are going up. So what I've got tonight for us is not only the full spec sheet, but also my panelists here, who are going to give me all the hot takes about whether or not you should actually buy one of these. Panelists.
Hey, what's up?
Hello.
It's strangely muted without a certain someone giving us extra commentary with like dancing or something like that. But I guess we're not talking about Asus tonight. So I mentioned pricing. Let's talk first about the Legion Go 2's pricing and announcement. They said that they're going to be launching sometime around the time frame of October 31st, so Halloween in the US. And there are already Best Buy pre-order pages available right now that you can go and check out. I think based on your region, you might actually be seeing it as pre-orders sold out, which is interesting because the pricing has gotten a lot of people, including you in the audience, pitchfork ready. So the base price is starting at $1049 for the base Z2 model, and then going all the way up starting from $1379 US for the Z2 Extreme, and going up as high as I believe $1499. Around that price for the top end Z2 Extreme with, I believe it's 2 terabytes of storage. Could be 1 terabyte. I'll have to double check that in post. But since we have the pricing, I'd like to ask all of you, tell me the good, tell me the bad, and tell me the ugly. I know that one of you has got to tell me something good here.
Yeah, well, I'll start if I may. I want to preface this with, we talk about these things and we actually speculated on price a couple of episodes back. And there are times when you have these conversations. Well, I'm going to speak for myself at least. You have these conversations and you know the logic behind what you're saying, but in your heart, that's not what you're hoping to see. And that's exactly the situation that we're in right now. Like, I feel like we knew it was going in that territory, but I was so hoping that they were going to shock us with something much lower, which, we still don't know the final price on the Xbox Ally X. And, just as a sideline, but if that is true, it's so much lower, but I guess we won't know until we know. But when looking at these prices with the Go 2, honestly, it's disappointing. And not to say that, again, we expected it, but man, it's hard to stomach. It's a pretty high price. And it's not like we know the kind of performance we're going to be getting. And yeah, okay, it has OLED, VRR, landscape. That's all great. But it's still such a far cry from where we'd want to be in terms of performance. So to me, it's a very hard sell.
Yeah, that's a fair statement about all of those things. What's your take on that, Nelly?
It is a tough price. Like it basically puts it in the same market as the offshore, like any of the 1X Player, the AYANEO, like any of those other brands, it puts it in those same price ranges. So now they're a lot closer and there's less of a piece of like, oh, do we go with the mainstream brand? Because it's really not more competitive than, what you'd be getting with the other brands. And with those other brands, you're getting some extra features that you wouldn't be getting with the mainstream brands. Like you might get your Oculink port and then you would be able to do better performance on an eGPU. You might get some different like interfaces on there with the regular USB, with some more Thunderbolt 4s, with the headphone jack. You're still getting all those things, the micro SD, just a different variation for different brands. And so I think if anything, it kind of opens people up more to those other brands than just kind of staying with the Lenovo and feeling kind of safe at those price points.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about the comparison to some other companies. Like typically when we talk about those other companies, the primarily Chinese domestic the Chinese domestic companies like GPD and 1X Player and AYANEO. And I think you're making a good point about all the port selection and stuff like that. And if you can assume that a person is okay with, maybe dodgy customer service, I mean, these companies that I just mentioned, they've been around for a couple of years already. We know that for the most part, we should expect that they're not just going to up and, take your money. So that part is kind of safe. However you feel about crowdfunding and stuff like that, that's sort of not exactly related, but I guess you could say that because you can buy things like a 1X Player X1 Pro off of Amazon, that kind of is like a half measure to not necessarily having to go with something like crowdfunding, even if the prices are different. I think another point about that too is, when we're looking at the pricing, we have to consider that when we're also looking at these new handhelds, we talked about like the the Super Max before, and like that has like new or like brand new cutting edge technology in the sense that not only just the APU and the AI Max 395, but also has that new mini SSD. So given that, the Z2E, which was announced, I believe like close to a year ago at this point, I mean, we're not getting this like cutting edge technology. So, I mean, if you were to try and do some mental gymnastics and tell yourself, well, I'm getting, the best of the best. It's like, well, sort of, even though it's overall like a nice package, even as the resident Lenovo shill or Legion Go shill of Handhelds United, like that's a tough pill for me too. I think that the price is just too much. It's too much. The juice is too much of the squeeze, not worth the squeeze or whatever the phrasing is. Right. So, I mean, since we have talked about the Legion Go 2 previously before, talking about leaks and things like that, I do think that our audience in particular has been highly anticipating this device. Probably it might even be the most anticipated device out of all the Z2 Extreme devices. So, I mean, what, if anything, for you still makes this a compelling purchase? And if not, like what has to change? What tips the scales for you? Is it just price?
Well, price is definitely something. It kind of puts a dent in what felt like a sure shot. But there are still many things that the Go 2 has. And if we use the Go 1 as a point of comparison, there's a fair chance that Lenovo will have that panel for a good while. Like we're talking about AYANEO, GPD, and 1X Player. But if it's a panel that they commissioned themselves and that they have locked into an exclusive for X amount of time, it's easily another 6 months before we'll see that panel elsewhere. So that's definitely a big benefit that it has, all things considered. And if we go back to what the Go 1 to this day still has that makes it stand out, the Go 2 also has those benefits, those detachable controllers. And then on top of that, you have hair triggers. And I had the opportunity to hold it at CES 2025. And it was really vastly improved. Like in terms of ergonomics, the buttons, all of it was absolutely improved. So there's still a lot to like from the Go 2. And I'm not trying to say that Lenovo is not doing something good here, but still, I can't help but go back to the price, and I can't help but go back to the Go S, which now I understand why those devices felt so absurd in pricing. Clearly, they were preparing for us to normalize the price that they're bringing the Go 2 at. That's what I think. Now that I know the prices that they're going for, that's why we had such an uplift. It was for us to be like, well, it's digestible, but really when I put things in perspective, it's not. It's so I'm torn. I thought it was a given. I'm torn. I'm sorry. I thought it was given. But there's still a lot of things to like, all things considered.
Yeah. What about you, Nelly? What if anything has to change to make this compelling?
It looks really good. Like the device looks good. It looks like it feels good. Like the specs are good. 32 gigs of RAM, great. Having the 2 terabyte option, okay. But I mean, it depends on the price difference, but if it's cheaper just to get the lower terabyte and then upgrade to a better one down the road, that might be a better option to make it a little more compelling to, or an easier pill to swallow in terms of the price, just to make it a little less right off the bat. But it is a tough sell for sure. And especially when you can get the HX370 devices for the same, if not less. And those are better devices in my opinion. overall, like for what you get for your money. But yes, you are dealing with a different customer service market for that. And yes, that's a little tougher. You might not get some of the features that you get with having Lenovo nearby, where you can go to a Best Buy and trade it in, or like, if you don't want the device and you have second thoughts about it, you can at least bring it back. You can't really do that with these devices. Like, you're stuck with it, but you can sell it on the, like, in the marketplace if that's an option for you. But it is a tough, but it like, the specs are good. It's exciting of a device, but I think it has to go on sale. Like, or you have to try to get an open box one. Like, maybe somebody gets it and they're like, this is too rich for my blood, and they return it and you're like, oh sweet, scoop up that open box. Like, it's going to be tough.
Yeah. I think you brought up, excuse me, coughing out some of the change that needs to be left over for the Legion Go 2, evidently. I think you brought up some great points about the comparison to the Chinese handheld markets. And speaking of marketplaces, if you are looking for a marketplace, you can of course check out our Discord on our Handhelds United Discord, which we have a marketplace now. If you're curious and you need to offload some of your handhelds to clearly people that don't have a problem with picking up more handhelds. But as a quick aside, I think what you mentioned, Clef, about like the Legion Go S is also a really great point too, because when we're making these comparisons, they're not being made in a vacuum, right? So if we look at the top end SKU, about $1,500, even if you look at the MSRP, the current MSRP, not a sale price of the Legion Go, it's tough because it's really hard to swallow, because you're saying that the Legion Go 2 top spec is the value of 2 Legion Go's. And again, that's not accounting for a sale price, right? And then if we look at the Legion Go S, which again, Clef, you mentioned, we look at that, which has gone on sale recently, the Windows variant anyway, the top end Z1E, 32 gigs of RAM, which actually I think might be one of the better picks currently. That even doesn't make sense when compared to the base model of the Legion Go 2 at the $1,049 pricing. Yes, you get the OLED panel. Yes, you get more battery life. And, some people, I like the detachable Go-Cons. Some people don't really care. But that's like, let's call it like 2.5 points difference. Is that 2.5 points difference worth an extra $300? I'm going to say no, probably not. You know what I mean? So, and then when you make that comparison again to like a sale price Legion Go, $500 to $1,049, also doesn't make any sense. The Z2, because I'm sure someone else there is curious, as far as we know, the base Z2 is essentially a refresh or a rebadge of the Z1 Extreme. It's very similar, with only very slightly lower like clocks on the GPU. So I don't expect it to really outperform the Z1 Extreme. Maybe it'll be slightly more efficient, but I wouldn't hold my breath for that. The Z2E we've seen, it's underperforming the HX370, as we've also predicted as well. That's not something unusual. And to Nellie's point, it makes it hard. It makes an even harder pill to swallow when literally you could go on Amazon, even purchase a competitive, let's say even, like an F1 Pro or an X1 Pro or something, and the price is, similar. And at least you have that 30-day window or whatever to make that decision, if that's what you want.
But if I may, I want to go back to what you said earlier with the crowdfundings too. Like, of course, that's a very me situation, but I'm in Quebec. I get taxed 15%. So that Legion Go 2 is suddenly more around the ballpark of $1,650, $1,700. When you think of what you get from crowdfunding for that kind of price, you're getting like top SKU. You're getting 64 gigabytes of RAM, 4 terabyte. And I agree with Nelly. I find that those devices often are better built. And it makes sense because they kind of had to take that no compromise approach to be able to compete with Steam Decks and Legion Go's and allies of the world. And so you have things like Oculink. You often have like just a no compromise device that will be able to ultimately give you more also in terms of drivers and in terms of APU. So yeah.
Like crowdfunding in general, it's kind of like the pre-order. Like let's talk about it. It's like the pre-order. We're pre-ordering Legion Go's. And it's like a month and a half in advance, and then eventually it'll ship to you a couple days later, whatever. It's the same thing with the crowdfunding. You're paying in advance. You can cancel it before it arrives, and then it ships out when it ships out. It's a similar process. I like the crowdfunding on a separate note for the Canadian side too, because as soon as it goes to the actual store, it costs way more with the US, the Canadian currency exchange. Way more. So catching something on a campaign, I will go for that any day. Like, give me that campaign.
I think that's an interesting point you're making about like it pre-ordering. I think in the past, as I was mentioning earlier, these companies, I don't think they're just going to like disappear like some kind of pop-up store. These companies, the three that we mentioned anyway, AYANEO, 1xplayer, and GPD, they're well established in the handheld PC space. If it was a brand new company that we hadn't heard of, yeah, I could understand feeling apprehensive about backing a project like that, because we have heard about those kinds of cases where the project never gets funded and you don't actually get your device. I think the worst case scenario currently anyway for backing something like that on backing a handheld device on like Kickstarter or Indiegogo is that you don't get your device in the time that they state it will. Or in the case of AYANEO, your device is delivered after they've announced 3 more devices, right? So like that's typically like the worst thing, I would say. But to your point again, Nelly, yeah, pre-ordering, it's almost the same, I would say, in that regard, for these companies in particular anyway. And it is also interesting, I think, that, yeah, it looks like the angle that they're taking is more luxury, more boutique, more cutting edge, right? So like, it's not knocking against anybody. If you want something that is kind of more mainline, more mainstream, maybe more the kinks are worked out and stuff like that, yeah, these big 3, MSI, Asus, Lenovo, those would probably be the ones you want to stick with. But if you don't, you're not all that bothered by tinkering. You do want to see what's out there on the horizon. It does look like these other brands are potentially the way to go, at least with this current structure of pricing. So on that note, with pricing again, for me personally, I'm wondering if you have the same sentiments. I think that the Legion Go 2, realistically, looking at the base price, Z2 model and then the Z2 Extreme, I think for it to be the most compelling decision, it needs to drop by like $200 to $300, be somewhere around $849 for the base price, and let's say like $1149 like a maximum. That was what I was realistically expecting as a maximum, because I think even if like they're taking, I understand, there's a whole argument about, well, they have to sell this because they don't sell any software, blah blah blah. I get that. I totally understand that. The problem is that if you make no profit because no one buys it, it doesn't matter what you price it at, right? So me talking about this, and we're looking at Lenovo, which has made a statement about getting the Xbox full screen experience later in 2026. What are your thoughts about where the Xbox Ally and Xbox Ally X have to be? Do you share the sentiment that it's literally their game to lose now? Like,
I think with Lenovo announcing what they're announcing, Asus and Microsoft have a big decision to make. They can either cut the wind under the soaring sky-high momentum of Lenovo, or they can just tag along for the ride and go migrate somewhere like birds do. Because as far as I'm concerned, that is definitely a good reason for Asus to be like, let's go $11.99 on the top SKU. And it would still be a deal, but it would be way less than what we heard, way less than what we speculated in previous episodes. And when I say way less, I mean of a price gap. So all things considered, I'm on the fence here. I feel like a part of me, like the corporate side of me, the corporate guy on my shoulder is like, yeah, let's ramp up the prices. But then the consumer guy on my shoulder is like, come on, man, like give us a break. Like, we're just getting choked no matter what angle we come from with the way that economy is going. So a part of me wants to see the Xbox Ally X around like 900, maybe 1,000 tops, but I don't know that it's going to happen when I see announcements like that. I just don't believe it all that much.
Yeah, the only thing that we have to hope for really is because it has a lower RAM. They're using the same RAM, so they're not taking in an extra cost there for the 32 like the Legion Go is. Their screen is the same screen, so there should be discounts like from that price point for what we're getting, because we're getting the same stuff they're already buying in bulk for the Ally X, but just with that better chip inside. So I think the Ally X Xbox version has an advantage here if they play their cards right, to just like sweep that like rush for the Z2 Extreme devices.
Yeah, I think so too. You tell me, Nelly, if you think. I actually think if they do Xbox Ally X at $1099, or they somehow match the base price of the Z2 at $1049,
it's a no-brainer.
They're gonna. I mean, you have to imagine that right now, Xbox's primary intention is to get the most people into their ecosystem as possible, like we talked on a previous episode about. So, if they're going to match, I totally understand. Clef's corpo suit take. I totally get that. And I understand it. I hate it, but I totally understand it from the business perspective. But I think that it's actually a win-win scenario potentially for consumers, because we get a lower price for the Ally, maybe not the Ally, but the Ally X. And in a way, it might actually force Lenovo's hand early. It might force them to
do discounts,
to do a price reduction. I don't think we're going to see one before like the end of holiday 2025. Probably the earliest is like January, like President's Day 2026. That's probably the earliest.
They'd have to have a rough launch. Like they'd have to have a rough launch.
Yeah,
I feel like it's not impossible. I agree with you, Nelly. If October launches, it doesn't sell that much, you can bet that there's going to be a Black Friday discount.
Yeah.
Either it's going to be like get a $100 value Steam card. Like there's going to be something. But I just want to put it out there. I think Xbox Ally X at $1099 is too expensive. As far as I really think it is. Like they need to hit $999. At $1099, yes, okay, there's a gap between the Z2E, but like we're talking Xbox Ally X, but it's still an IPS panel. It still doesn't have detachable controllers. It's still a smaller screen. There's a lot of things that honestly, and that's again corporate guy. If they're going for $1099, I get it. I hate it, and I'm not buying it.
Oh no, I agree with you, Clef. No, I get it. $1099, I think, will be appeasing the customer base. But as we talked about the differences between Z1E and Z2E, like if you're willing to get a used Ally X, or you just get an Ally X on sale, I believe those have gone for like $799, which was the original launch price. Again, it's that same comparison between a Legion Go and a base Legion Go 2. I don't think that extra $200-$300 is worth it. It's just realistically not worth it, particularly for the Ally X, because as Nelly said, it's got the same RAM configuration, and as both of you said, same display too, right? Yep. So really, you're paying an extra $200-$300 for the Xbox skin and and
the chip
and and the chip. I mean, which is like 10, maybe 15% ish performance. I understand people are going to say, well, you don't get the Xbox ergonomics or whatever, but I don't know. I feel like that's...
Well, here's what I think is interesting, because Asus said, right, they officially said the Xbox Ally X, think of it as the ROG Ally 2. That's what it is. They said it themselves. So if we take into consideration that the Xbox Ally X is in many ways ROG Ally X, very close to at least, that means that they can still easily keep up productions for both. They don't have to alter production of the older SKUs in favor of the new ones. They can still maintain both. So that would actually give another incentive to be able to keep the price low, because they're going to have that other SKU for people that are feeling like, you know what? I don't need that extra power. I don't care for those handles. Let me just get an Ally X. I feel ready to jump in the market. I really hope they don't go past $999.
Yep. As I said in the intro, the prices are going up, and it doesn't look like they're going down anytime soon. But speaking of which, I hope that you're all down to join us for our next Speedcast, unless I missed something, of course, or if one of my panelists are going to say that we got something completely wrong, in which case, once again, please hop on our Discord to correct us. Until next time. All right. Thank you.